topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Churchill said, "Those who fail to learn from history are condemned to repeat it." Kevin Hallinan believes that certainly applies to business. Welcome to Winning Business Radio, here at W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. And now, your host, Kevin Hallinan.
Thanks, everybody, for joining in today. I am Kevin Hallinan, and welcome back to another episode of Winning Business Radio, now Winning Business TV on W4CY.com. We're live streaming at Talk4TV.com, as well as Winning Business Radio on Facebook. The mission of this show, and as regular listeners know, is to offer insights and advice to help people avoid the mistakes of others, right? To learn best practices, the how-tos, the what-tos, the what-not-tos, to be challenged, and I hope to be inspired by the successes of others. But, you know, virtually every successful person I've ever talked to has had some form of failure in their lives and careers, right? So while we all have to get our knees skinned once in a while, I'm driven to keep those scrapes from needing major surgery. As you heard in the tagline at the beginning, let's endeavor to learn from history so we don't repeat it. Today, my guest is Matt McGinty, Chief Revenue Officer of IntelyCare. Matt is the, again, Chief Revenue Officer, where he leads sales, customer success, provider support, and recruiting for the company. Prior to joining IntelyCare, he served as a senior executive at leading companies including Shift Analytics, easy for me to say, Matt, Shift Analytics, Fixu DSP, GTXL, Ramp, and Fast. He holds an MBA and Bachelor's in Business Administration from Western New England College, where he's also chairman of the board for the College of Business and adjunct professor for leadership in the graduate school. Matt enjoys all kinds of outdoor sports, loves to hunt, loves his winters outdoors. Just ask him, he'll tell you. He lives in Dedham, Mass. with his wife, Stephanie, daughter, Haley, son, AJ, and their two dogs, Ava and Mickey. Matt, welcome to Winning Business Radio and TV.
Oh, looking forward. Thanks for having me, Kevin. It's a nice day.
It is. It's finally nice, right? New England springs.
Looking forward to it.
All right, so let's start with, I know we've got some news. We'll get to that in a little bit, but let's start with your family. Tell us about Stephanie, and, you know, I know you married up, so let's.
That is the biggest understatement I've ever heard of. Steph and I have been together now for 27 years, I think, and married 17. So been a long high school sweethearts, been together a long time. And then AJ turns 14 next month. It's just crazy. He's off to high school next year, and then at Severian Brothers High School in Norwood. Mm-hmm. And then Haley's a sixth grader. She turns 12 the month after, and she's at St. Catherine's in Norwood as well. Mm-hmm. Actually, Severian is in Westwood, not Norwood, but so they're Catholic school kids, which is good. So, and then Mickey, you know, the dog, the Basset Hound. Nobody dislikes Mickey. She's the highlight of the house.
That's funny. I remember when AJ was born. It seems like, I mean, my kids are older, but you know, so time passes fast. But I remember when he was born. That's funny.
We've known each other a long time, Kevin.
We have. Tell us a quick thumbnail on both AJ and Haley. What are they into? Tell the audience what they're into.
Yeah, so AJ is 14. He's really smart. I'm not one of those guys that drives around with the stickers of their kid on my car saying that they're the smartest kid in the school, made the honor roll, but super smart kid.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's just not my scene. But I certainly could put a bumper sticker on my car about both of them. Yeah. But AJ's really good at school, really enjoys everything about school, wants to be an engineer someday, wants to go to the Naval Academy or the Air Force Academy.
Outstanding.
He's a very binary kid, so maybe he changes his mind though. He said Yale the other day, and I was like, sure, whatever you want to do, buddy. He plays lacrosse and a lot of hockey, but kind of he takes school as his competitive sport, which is good for him. And then Haley she is my super athlete. So she plays on like 3 different hockey teams, plays field hockey, plays lacrosse, also does very, very good at school, and the social butterfly that she is. So it's really kind of, what do they call that? A rich man's family, when you have a boy and a girl and they're different like they are. So it's super rewarding to have 2 kids that, have great manners and are really good people, and turned out a hell of a lot better than I did, largely because of my wife. So
That's awesome. So tell folks where you grew up.
Oh yeah, I'm very passionate about this topic. It's totally surprising to anybody who knows me that I'm passionate about a topic. But I grew up in a small town in Western Massachusetts called Pittsfield, right on the New York border. So you'll notice I have no Boston accent because I grew up with New York TV out of Albany, New York. Yeah, I grew up in Pittsfield where Moby Dick was written, plastic was invented, first night skiing, all that cool stuff out there. I still own a house down in Otis, Massachusetts on the reservoir. So I spent summers out in Western Mass. So, I live in the Boston area, but my home is in the Berkshires. So I'm pretty passionate about that. We got a boat out there, spend a lot of time out there. And if I'm not up there, I'm up in Vermont, which you alluded to. My dad built a place up in Vermont. So we kept that tradition alive after he passed in 2015 and spent a lot of time up in the woods. So if I'm not here in this whatever size box that I'm in or out in the field with clients, I try to be out with nature and put my phone down a little bit.
So how did you make it? You went to school in Western Mass too. We'll get to that in a moment. How did you make it to Dedham and Eastern Mass?
Oh, that's a great question. So my brothers are 14 and 13 years older than me. My brother made a home in Westwood. So when, I was kind of looking at internships when I was in college, I said, I knew I wanted to be in high tech. I wanted to, startups were a non-thing at that point, but I knew I wanted to be kind of high on the high tech side of things because my degree was in management with a concentration in leadership, but also a minor in computer information systems. So I knew I wanted to kind of help lead people. And I say help lead them because people lead themselves. You're just there to kind of help them along the way. And then I knew technology was something that I was passionate about, but I knew I didn't want to break code in the long term. So I knew like Boston was a good epicenter for that at the time. And I knew that's kind of where I wanted to end up for a while. And my brother was there, and that's how I ended up in Dedham. I was originally in Norwood and then moved over to Dedham. So I've never been further than 3 miles from my older brother Sean's house since I've moved out here, which is good because we're pretty close and spent a lot of time together.
You got a lot of games together, right?
We do. Yeah, a lot of Bruins games. He's not so big on the Patriots like I am, but certainly a lot of Bruins games together.
So what made you choose Western New England University? I know you're passionate about WNEU.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's the only place that would let me in. No. Honestly, it's a fun story. You talk about skinning your knees in the beginning.
Yeah.
Talk about the first life lesson I had in skinning my knees. When I was in high school, I did fine in high school, probably an underachiever, just I had a lot more upside than I put in the effort, as my mother would tell you. And hopefully she's not a guest on the show. And then
I'll have to book her.
Yeah.
A little fact check.
Yeah. We're going to have to put another disclaimer at the front of this. No, lacrosse is what I was passionate about. Right. And I'll be honest, I still think it's the only thing I've ever been good at in my life. Where like everything slows down for you, like the whole world just seems like in that moment, it's moving really slow in your mind and your eyes and what you're feeling and hearing and all your senses. So I wanted to play lacrosse. And the true story is I was looking at UMass to get a scholarship actually to go to UMass. I was pushing hard for that. And then I went up and partied at UMass and I was like, I'm going to get a young guy from Pittsfield, Massachusetts, who went to a small Catholic school and graduated with 75 people. I was going to get, gobbled up, much less probably never have a chance to play at UMass. I probably wasn't good enough, but in my head, nothing was going to stop me at that point. And then I kind of looked at various different schools that had lacrosse programs. Plus I also looked at, I looked at Catholic schools because I came from a Catholic school, right? So the St. Michael's, the St. Anselm's, the Assumptions, Merrimack's, kind of all those. And I got into all those, with the exception of St. Michael's. I didn't want to go up to Vermont. I spent enough time there. I didn't want to go up to there.
My dad went to St. Mike's.
It's a great school. It's a beautiful school. And my dad went to St. Anselm's. I had the shorts, I had the sweatshirt, I had the t-shirt, I had the hat, I had everything. He was pushing real hard.
Yeah.
They were just starting the lacrosse program. They put like my picture up on the screen and, like all that cool stuff. But, kind of I'm the youngest and I wanted to do whatever my parents I want to do the opposite of whatever my parents wanted me to do.
Risk taker.
Yeah. So I kind of like, no, I want to play D1 lacrosse. And that was probably a bit of a dream, and started to look. And then I knew I wanted to stay between kind of where my brother was in Boston and my parents were in Pittsfield. And that kind of knowing I loved Boston sports and that whole scene. And I started to look across that spectrum. And then when I got to, kind of Western, like Springfield's right in the middle, kind of close. Even though it's in Western Mass, it's in the 413. I was looking at it, I was like, Springfield. And I looked at Springfield College first. And I didn't want to play an AstroTurf because it was like concrete at the time. Field turf. And I went down the street to look at Western New England, and I was like, man, this campus is beautiful. And something about the campus just spoke to me. And then I went back and visited a bunch of times and had all intentions of playing lacrosse at Western New England, where, I probably would have a better chance to play. And, smaller class sizes, smaller everything, just kind of felt like the right fit. And then I blew out my knee at the end of my high school, senior year of high school, had surgery the day after I graduated, and never could really rehab get back on the field. And thank God I made Western New England decision because of the whole picture. It wasn't just lacrosse. It was the size. It was the classroom size. It was, I love the School of Business. It was intimate. You could spend a lot of one-on-one time with professors. And, thank God that was also part of my decision-making criteria, because, getting hurt was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. I wouldn't be sitting here if I didn't do that.
Yeah. Which is a good segue into your career. I'll ask you one question. We'll take our first break. But you started as a business systems analyst, right? At a bank.
Yeah, I started at a bank. Yeah, I've got a very quick story about that. You want to hear it?
Yeah.
So there was a decimal point bug in a piece of software. The CTO was, in the office. We were in the John Hancock building in downtown Boston, and it's, suit and tie. Finance was not my world, because I like to go at like lightning speed. I'm the most impatient person in the world, and finance is the exact. Long story short, I ended up there because I did an internship there, and that became a full-time role. And it was kind of like, business support. So kind of a level up from the help desk and trying to help people connect their technical problems with the business problems. And then one day I found there was a mistake in the code, and I was like, oh my God, this is going to cost the company millions if I don't fix it. So I just fixed it. I moved the decimal point back, and then I saved the company millions. And here I'm thinking I'm a hero. And the CTO brings me in his office and says, okay, that was amazing, but I'm going to bring you out in front of everybody and tell you screwed up. And then I'm going to bring you back in my office. I'm going to try to help you learn how to go to a startup. And I was like, what just happened? I'm 20 something years old. I'm like, what did I do wrong? I saved the company millions. He's like, yeah, but the risk of you moving it back also could have cost the company millions. And in finance, we don't think that way. We think about the risk profile. We're happy to eat a couple $1,000,000 over a mistake that we can recoup, rather than maybe make the chance of maybe making two mistakes. And I was like, this is bananas. And he's like, you're right. It is bananas. And that's why I'm going to help you network and work on your resume and help you go to a startup, because that's where you want to be. So that's kind of how I ended up there, was my internship and moved over. And that was kind of my epiphany moment, that I wanted to be, in a faster paced, startup environment.
Well, you certainly did that. We'll talk about that in just a minute. We will be back with Matt McGinty, Chief Revenue Officer of IntelyCare.
You're listening to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan on W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. Don't go away. More helpful information is coming right up, right here on Winning Business Radio.
Hey everyone, I'm Jimmy Star, the king of cool and your host of the Jimmy Star Show, the entertainment radio show for all you cool and unique people looking to get a behind-the-scenes peek at what's going on in the entertainment industry. Listen in as me and my cool crowd of co-hosts bring you celebrity guests, new music, and the good times in fashion, entertainment, and pop culture. Right, everybody? Right! Tune in live Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern on W4CY.com.
Hey, this is Kenny Wayne Shepherd, and you're listening to W4CY Radio.
.com, Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Bestgen Wealth Management is a second-generation, family-owned financial planning and wealth advisory firm. In addition to coordinating complex business and personal planning needs, our firm takes a sincere interest in your well-being and personal values. Find us at bestgenwm.com. That's bestgenwm.com, where we consider all our clients an extension of our family. Advisory services offered through Commonwealth Financial Network, a registered investment advisor.
And now back to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan, presenting exciting topics and expert guests with one goal in mind, to help you succeed in business. Here once again is Kevin Hallinan.
We're back with Matt McGinty, Chief Revenue Officer of IntelyCare. Matt, take us through FAST, and then this is where I met you when you were a franchise owner of a fitness organization. So start with FAST, transition to fitness together.
Yeah, so the transition out of Investors Bank and Trust, I was about to say IntelyCare. Investors Bank and Trust was into FAST, and there goes the Western Mass connection. I actually applied for a role as a sales engineer in the sales engineering team at FAST, which FAST was an enterprise search company that required, at the time, it was like a ball of clay. I don't know how to explain it. It was a true platform. You get a lump of clay, and then you kind of got to turn it into the art. So we worked with a lot of, kind of outward facing platforms like, Dell. The first laptop builder they had on Dell was us, and Best Buy's navigation and search control was all us. And I worked on those as well. So, they were in an exciting space where you saw a lot of big commercial brands, and you also saw a lot of, big corporations, Fortune 500 companies working behind their firewall to index their entire, kind of SharePoint directories, which SharePoint was brand new then, and a whole bunch of things like that. So you saw a lot of different customers, right? You saw a lot of different markets. You saw media and entertainment, which is where I later went to Ramp. You saw a lot around e-commerce and just everything anything you see a search box on back in the day was a little more complicated back in the early 2000s. So that's kind of where I jumped from Investors Bank and Trust, because I knew I wanted to work in a startup, and FAST was on fire. I want to say there was like 50 people when I got there. There was hundreds when I left, and we were over 300 million in revenue and got acquired for Microsoft for $1.2 billion. And where I met you was before I I'm going to tell a little Kevin story for 1 second, so bear with me. Well, sales engineers answer questions, right? So kind of like you're taught that the good customer service is giving the customer what they want, and that's an answer to their question. So, when I was thinking about going and running a fitness business as we were wrapping up FAST, and it was looking like it was going to be acquired, and, my stock would all be worth something. Kind of I was like, what's next? And I thought about starting a fitness business, and then eventually having Steph take it over and then go back into tech. My buddy John invited me to come to one of your sessions, and I think I brushed back on everything that you said to me in that session. And I remember you just saying, well, just try one thing and ask the next person you talk to on a call. It's a great question. Why do you ask? And I was like, sure, I'll do that. And I immediately left that meeting and went to a call with a massive book publisher. And I won't say their names, but they're very, very big. And I was on this call with them, and they asked me a question. They said, what are your security standards that you follow or practices? And I always would sweat when somebody would say that, because it was really hard for us to integrate at the time with Active Directory, and everything else was relatively new. So there weren't APIs and all this cool stuff there is now for integration. And, I was about to do diarrhea of the mouth and just give him all the answers and then hopefully kind of nudge him away from doing it. So instead I asked your question, and it just came to mind. It was written on my notebook, still open from our lunch meeting. Yeah. And I said, that's a great question. Why do you ask? And the guy said to me, no, I just want to see what you're going to say. And that was my epiphany moment. I was like, shoot, like, it's not important. The good service is not me answering every question that they have. It's understanding the context in which they ask the question and what's really impacting them. And that one moment changed my true story. Don't let it go to your head, but changed my entire kind of business trajectory. I won't say sales, because I think I do a lot more than just sales, but certainly changed my entire business trajectory. So that was an exciting run. Got to work with some really cool customers, and that's really what kind of led into me deciding to start my own business.
What were I don't want to get into the whole fitness business per se, but what were your key takeaways from having been really an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
That 2+ year period.
Yeah. You talk about skin in your knees, and this is a good example. I'll do it from that perspective.
Yeah.
I think, I was passionate about fitness. I still am. You can tell right now, I just had knee surgery. You can see the crutches behind me. So if you don't believe me, they're right there. Just had knee surgery a week and a half ago. But I was passionate about fitness, and they always say, find something you love to do, find a way to do it, right? I get paid to do it. And my buddy John had been really successful in fitness, and we'd always talked about starting a gym together, and he was nudging me, just like he was nudging me to go meet with you. And as fast was kind of ramping up, I decided, well, this is it. I'm going to take my big swing, right? And I took the big swing and bought 2 existing facilities, took them into the 2 worst to 2 of the best. They were always in the top 10, top 5. John always beat me, and I will, I'll concede on that. But
he probably doesn't let you forget that either.
No, he doesn't. But it was fun. So there was a lot of that I think teaches you when you have to market the business and you have to sell and you have to do all those things. It gives you a lot of perspective, right? And I think it makes me good at what I'm doing now because it makes me realize what not to focus on. More about the things you say no to than the things you say yes to, and really focus and figure out how to scale. And no offense to any personal trainers that are listening to this, because I am still a personal trainer too, but personal trainers don't come out with sales and business training usually.
Right.
So like being able to train them and come up with a system was to hire them, and then also to train them was really important because, then I didn't have to be there on top of the business all day. That said, a little thing happened in 2009 where, a lot like today, the gas was like $4 a gallon, and kind of the interest rates were going crazy, haywire. People stopped buying houses, and there's the Great Recession. That is not a recession-proof business. But luckily, I got out from under it without losing too much. I learned a lot from that, and I always asked John, what can I do better in that business? And he said, you took the swing, and you did a great job, right? You can't control what happens to the market. We talk about little things we can do better, but I think what I learned is when I am a CEO, or when I use the word when I'm running a business again, really trying to find, and that's why I kind of ended up in IntelyCare and really looking at healthcare. That was very deliberate. Like, how do you end up in a place, in a marketplace, which is exciting because you always have to change, but how do you also in a marketplace that you can always find more chunks of the market versus when you're in fitness, it's like, okay, that's an abrupt end. That's discretionary spending versus a need to have versus a want to have. So, that goes to selling, finding needs, but that also goes to how I think about a business. So skinning my knee, I followed my passion. I got to figure out how to follow my passion, but also do it in a way that for me is going to give me something a market that I can constantly evolve with it. And it's more of a need to have. And that's just kind of one of the lessons I learned from skinning my knee from that. But having to make the business successful to pay for your brand new baby and pay for your mortgage teaches you a lot about life.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
So you made a series of decisions along the way. You were in various companies. Your responsibility increased. The question is, if somebody is watching or listening today and they're thinking about a career in sales, but more, they want to be a sales leader.
Yeah.
What would your best advice to them be?
Don't do it. It's a trap. No, kidding. I'm totally kidding. Do it for the right reasons. I think people do this job, and rightfully so, because we want to make money. And anybody who's listening that's a salesperson should not apologize that they want to make money. And I think there's still too much of that going on. Like you are choosing a high risk role because you're betting on yourself, and you want the high reward when you bet on yourself. And that is absolutely fair. That said, if you want to be in sales leadership, I like to tell people that it's the most thankless job on earth. Right? Because you can have a great quarter or a great month or a great year one moment, and then the next moment you could be getting bludgeoned. And that's not for everybody. You got to have, we use a hiring system. And one of the things we look for in our hiring system is resilience. And it's for that reason. If you don't have a lot of resilience as a sales leader, and just because you can sell really well and carry a bag, or maybe even if you've managed 2 or 3 people and made them successful too, that doesn't mean you should You try to go for my job. If that's your goal, you should, but you should really think about what you want, right? You have to want to make people better. You have to want to show extreme ownership and accountability at all times. You've got to want to be outward, using the outward mindset. I'm quoting books a lot in leadership and self-deception. You really got to want to connect with a lot of different people, because salespeople, can be very emotional. They can be very artistic and creative. They can be very process driven. They can be all those things. And you've got to want to manage people across the spectrum and be able to make all of them successful. And you've got to believe that you're on the receiving end of their success, not the other end around. And I think too many people in my role think, right, like, oh, I'm going to let the sales guy tee it up and I'm going to pull it over the finish line. None of those people end up being in a unicorn that I'm sitting in right now, because it's about all them out there. It's not about me. It's my job to make their job easier. I don't think a lot of sales leaders get that, right? They think it's their job to be this big personality and lead. And I'm certainly a big personality and I certainly lead, but there's times you got to make sure they get all the credit for everything that goes right and you take credit for everything that goes wrong. And I don't think people really understand that when they get into roles that are like mine or mine, that's really kind of their role. I could be wrong. I'd love to be proved wrong. But I still don't think people get that. They think it's about the money and the glory and their lifestyle, and all those are important. But if all their lifestyles out there are good, mine will be good.
Right.
And I think that's the perspective that I found is different as I've moved along, and more effective to allow, IntelyCare to get to where we got to.
Good answer. All right. So you joined the company in late or mid to late, right? 2019.
Yeah, it was August 2019. Yeah.
Okay. And why did you choose? You said you were intentional about that decision.
Yeah.
Take us through that decision.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was talking to a few former investors and friends that were putting me in, frankly, bigger roles that for my ego, like president roles. A couple CEO conversations evolved, and it was honestly, it was cool to be a part of those conversations, because that really is my end goal. And I'm like, hey, I'm here. This is cool to be a part of these discussions. And I got a phone call from a executive recruiter on the inbound who heard that I was out in the market and had basically said, hey, we were recommended by the board member of this company, IntelyCare, and they're connected with a board member of somebody else you knew. Like, we think you should look at this. And I'll be honest with you, my first reaction to IntelyCare was like, staffing, Quincy? No, like not interested at all. That is not my bailiwick. The wise person on the other shoulder said, Matt, you never, turn down an opportunity to have a conversation, go have the conversation. And I was dead set at that point to taking the rest of that summer off, spending time with my kids, driving them to school every day in the fall, maybe getting back after it in the late fall. I had some flexibility to be able to do that. And, or the beginning of the next year. And I had a couple things lined up. I was cruising, right? And like, this is perfect. And I go look at this place. I'm like, this is really interesting. But, my ego is talking on the other shoulder, or whatever shoulder I was pointing at last time. And then I talked to, this investor friend of mine, and I said, staffing, like Quincy. And he said something really smart to me. And by the way, he was involved in the other business I was looking at. So that was, it carried a lot of weight. And he said, Matt, you gotta ask yourself a couple questions. One, is this a rocket ship? Because if it's in a rocket ship, just get on the damn rocket ship and then figure out where your seat is. And I was like, that's interesting. And then he said, the other piece is try to find another business that you can still disrupt paper with. And I was like, that's a really good thought process, right? Think about a business that really disrupts these institutions, kind of like an Uber disrupted the taxi market. You know what I mean? Like, just disrupted it and said, we're just going to think of ourselves differently. And by thinking of ourselves differently, we're going to behave differently. We're going to do differently. But ultimately, it's still a car getting you from point A to point B, right? And I think people get stuck in that. And there was the mission, the purpose is what ultimately got me. My father had dementia for 3-4 years. It was really tough, particularly because he was a teacher and an educator and worked 2 jobs his whole life. And it was more on us than him, seeing that happen to a guy like that. It's tough because you're like that. Your brain was your moneymaker. You know what I mean? I just remember, he was briefly in a nursing home and my mother going to see him every day. And bringing him food, and he passed away at lunch when my mom wasn't there to get in to come see him. And a lot of the things that were swirling around this were staffing shortages. So it's like, you can't check into a dementia unit. I experienced the same thing when I went and saw him. I waited for 30 minutes to get in just so somebody could check me in. And then every time I'd hear there's a staffing shortage. So ultimately that spoke to me, right? It spoke to me like, we're solving a multifaceted pain for people.
Yeah.
You're helping the end patient get better care. You're helping the nurse, the full-time nurse that works in that facility, get more balance in their life so they don't feel like they have to work overtime every week, right? And then you're helping the nurse that we IntelyCare put into a shift because they want work-life balance too. They have kids at home in daycare, and they want to work in a gig basis, a lot like an Uber driver does. They don't want to be in a 9-to-5 job or, set shift job. They want to work when their schedule allows it to because of their life situation. You're helping them too. Right. So to me, I've always been a little bit of an idealist when it comes to kind of giving back. I was involved with Livestrong for a long time and a number of other, kind of foundations. And the cool part about this is like, wait a minute, like this is a business. It's exciting. It's a great opportunity. And also, all the care that we provide. And then just kind of that whole package wrapping around it was interesting, but also, really good mentor here in terms of John Shigori and David Coppins, our CEO. So we have a president and a CEO. But John comes out of, kind of healthcare for a long time, really experienced, knows this is his last gig. So having a mentor that's like letting you do a lot of his job, I jokingly say delegates to me all the time. Having that extra level of experience is going to make me that much more prepared because he was the CEO of Eliza, president of Nuance Health. So you don't kind of replicate that type of person in your career. So having a mentor that wants to delegate to me very often gives me that, kind of leg up to where I'd be kind of stretching last time when I was looking at those president roles. I feel like, now I will be heavily prepared for those types of roles next time I'm in the conversation for those.
Excellent. All right, we're going to take our second break right here. We'll be back in about 2 minutes with Matt McGinty, CRO, Chief Revenue Officer of IntelyCare.
You're listening to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan on W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. Don't go away. More helpful information is coming right up, right here on Winning Business Radio.
Have you ever dreamed of having your own radio show? Well, W4CY Radio makes dreams come true. You can be a radio personality on the #1 ranked internet radio station in West Palm Beach, Florida. We can be heard in 105 countries and all U.S. states. Promote your business, earn up to $10,000 per month and more. It's all up to you. Have fun and be heard. Call 561-506-4031. That's 561-506-4031. Start your radio show now.
This is Rebel Medler. Join me for In Your Face on W4CY.com, Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Bestgen Wealth Management is a second-generation, family-owned financial planning and wealth advisory firm. In addition to coordinating complex business and personal planning needs, our firm takes a sincere interest in your well-being and personal values. Find us at bestgenwm.com. That's bestgenwm.com, where we consider all our clients an extension of our family. Advisory services offered through Commonwealth Financial Network, a registered investment advisor.
Hey, this is Johnny Three Tears from Hollywood Undead, and you're listening to W4CY Radio.
I do whatever it takes to make it break through. Anything I'm face to face with, it's true.
And now back to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan, presenting exciting topics and expert guests with one goal in mind, to help you succeed in business. Here once again is Kevin Hallinan.
And we're back again with Matt McGinty, CRO, of IntelyCare. Who knows? So you talked about the gig economy, traditional staffing, that didn't excite you. Describe IntelyCare in light of traditional versus non-traditional?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a lot of agencies that place nurses within facilities or
Mm-hmm.
hospitals, and they do it by kind of all manual work, back and forth, phone calls and everything else.
Right.
There's tech-enabled agencies that do use a little technology, scheduling tools, things like that, to get people on shifts. But what we have to do is we have to move from Uber the ride sharing service to Uber. Uber the taxi to Uber the ride sharing service. We are making that same kind of trajectory across that. And what that means is that's where the data science comes in. That's where the technology comes in at a higher level, where you got the best of what Uber does or a Lyft does, but also the best of what a Match.com does, where you've got a dementia nurse and she's got 5 stars. This facility is looking for that. You recommend those things using data science and their behavior about when they take shifts, when they don't take shifts, what type of shifts do they take. And it's more about the proactive process of creating a marketplace than it is just trying to get somebody to pick up a shift. Now, certainly the end result is the same, but just like Uber, the end result is the same. So if you're in San Francisco and you're at Dreamforce, Salesforce's big conference, and you walk out in front of Dreamforce in San Francisco and you pop open Uber, you're not going to see all 2,000 Uber drivers that are salivating around the corner to pick people up. You're going to see 5? That's essentially what they're doing. They're creating that match that happens. And we're essentially doing that same thing. Yes, the end result is still a filled shift, but our mindset, which in mindset's important about everything, is that we're really there to help the facilities, maximize their staff, right? And really think about staffing strategies. We're not there to help them just fill shifts. The end result is filling a shift, but doing it in a way that they have all the tools in their hands and getting the people that are going to continuously fill shifts and bring quality and bring, high satisfaction to their residents and all those things. That's much more important, not just getting a warm body on a shift to check a box. And I mean, no disrespect to agencies when I say that at all, because they have a hard job. But if you're spending all day on the phone and emails, just saying, hey, I've got a nurse that'll work this time, you're in logistics. You're not in matching. We're in matching. Like, we are in trying to make the facility experience better. The nurses inside of the facilities have a better experience, and the nurses that are working the gigs have a better experience. We also give them benefits. They're W-2 workers. Like, we just treat them very, very differently, which is different than Uber, by the way. They're all 1099. They're contractors.
Right.
In this case, they're our employees. So we spend a lot of time, focused on the nurse. And I'm going to make a big, bold statement. Our goal in the next 3 years is to have a relationship some way or how, whether that's through social media or services that we offer, education. We also offer education, whether it's through, kind of whatever services we have. We want to have a relationship with every single nurse in this country in the next 3 years. And that's what's different. Like, Uber wants to be in transportation. Like, they're talking about going into airplanes and everything else because they want to connect people that want transportation. They don't just want to be a cab that's going to take you from destination to destination to check a box. That's how we're thinking about things as well. Maybe a little bit bold, but we're making good progress.
Well, full disclaimer, I should just say that, I've engaged, just for the audience's sake, I'm working with your company, developing the sales teams and the recruiting teams, but you guys have seen tremendous growth. When you started, you had, you've had how many total employees? Tell me how many you have now, what the revenues are looking like, and you used the word unicorn. I want people to hear what that means.
Yeah, we had about a dozen people when I got here. We had a plan to do about 10 million in revenue in 2019. We got really excited when we did like 16. We were like, we are crushing it, right? And then we had a plan to basically do 50 the next year, more than double the next year, and ended up doing a lot more than that. So just under 100 the next year, to use round numbers. And then really blew the covers off of everything last year, and really more than tripled to get that up in, kind of the 300 range, 300 to 400 range. So really doing really well from a revenue growth perspective. So being really successful from that front. Double and tripling the business. Those things are all great. But more importantly, we've tripped on something around, kind of how we provide service in the market that is focused on the nurse. right? And nobody's done that. They're treated as a commodity in this world. We really focus on the nurse and really trying to make the nurse feel like they're belonging and they're valued. And we hired Rebecca Love, who's, got TED Talks and certainly, very loud voice and great voice in terms of how the nurses are seen in this country. They are a part of a cost model, not a revenue model.
Yeah.
And you think about it, and that's a problem, right? And we have to solve that. And that's what we want to solve. So getting to the unicorn piece, we just announced that we raised over $100 million in our Series C investment, and we're valued over $1 billion, right? So I personally am very humbled and blessed, and never thought that would happen or happen in the rate that it's happened. I'm also really lucky because I'm one of the few people, I think, that's happened to twice, because that happened to at Fast, where we were a $1.2 billion exit at Fast. So I'm super humbled, but at the end of the day, it comes back to the mission, right? That's how that happens. And we haven't even scratched the surface in terms of like where we're going with this. Like I said, we want to make sure we have a relationship with every nurse in the country. So every nurse in the country has a voice. But I want to be clear, that doesn't mean we're not there to support our facilities and whatever other markets we go in. That includes the nurses within those facilities and those other, kind of segments of healthcare that we decide to or not decide to work with. It's about giving them a voice too, so that we can make those connections happen. Because again, it's about making the connections happen, right. And giving everybody a voice in the process, not just getting people on shifts.
So within healthcare, talk about the verticals or the segments, market segments that you're in.
Yeah. So we operate mostly in long-term care, which is, SNFs, skilled nursing facilities, ALFs, which are assisted living facilities, dementia care units, things like that, adult daycares. Also hospice and home health is an area we're really starting to see a lot of explosive growth. We've signed a whole bunch of customers there in the past couple months. We think that's where the reimbursement dollar is going, is over to home health. So we're going to follow that dollar, maintain the market we're in, defend the market and the TAM we're in, and really be smart about doubling the TAM by where the reimbursement dollar is also going to naturally go. And then that's going to open up a lot of opportunities for, other areas of healthcare, whether that's through, kind of adjunct part of going through acute care or even hospitals themselves someday.
All right. We are pretty much out of time. Two things. If people wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way? If they're a nurse and they want to plug in, if they're a facility in any of those areas and they wanted to find out more, what would they do?
Yeah, that's great. Send me an email. I don't care if people know my email. It's McGinty@IntelyCare.com. So MMCGINTY@IntelyCare.com. I'm probably setting myself up for a lot of emails, but I love to hear from people. So let's talk.
Cool. And you can forward those emails to the right people. Matt, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I know you're very busy, and I just appreciate you carving out some time for us.
Yeah, likewise. This is great. Thanks for doing this.
You got it. And thanks everybody for watching and listening. This is a show about business growth, business successes, business challenges. If you've got concerns about the growth of your company, feel free to reach out to me. You can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn at Winning Business Radio. You can drop me a note, kevin@winningbusinessradio.com. Our company is called Winning Incorporated. We're part of Sandler Training. We develop sales teams into high achievers and sales leaders into true coaches and mentors. Listen, we're not right for everybody, but maybe we should have a conversation. Thank you to Roxy, our engineer producer, for another job well done. We'll be back at it again next Monday, 4 p.m. Eastern. See you there.
You've been listening to Winning Business Radio with your host, Kevin Hallinan. If you missed any part of this episode, the podcast is available on Talk4 Podcasting and iHeartRadio. For more information and questions, go to winningbusinessradio.com or check us out on social media. Tune in again next week and every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time to listen live to Winning Business Radio on W4CY Radio, W4CY.com. Until then, let's succeed where others have failed and win in business with Kevin Hallinan and Winning Business Radio.